Hello, folks. This is Joe with a very special announcement. On Friday, September 21st, I'll be hosting the Trap Set Live with special guests Rod Argent and Colin Blunstone, founders of one of my all-time favorite bands, The Zombies. After the conversation, Rod and Colin will play an ultra-rare, all-acoustic set of timeless classics. It all takes place at Ace Hotel in Palm Springs, California. This is an intimate performance and space is limited. Don't miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Visit our website, thetrapset.net, for more details. This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing Punk Rock Girl by the Dead Milkmen, featuring my guest, Dean Clean Sabatino on drums. Formed in Philadelphia in 1983, the Dead Milkmen have lured in generations of fans with crisp, satirical songwriting, an antidote to that of their more serious hardcore contemporaries. But beneath the layer of goofiness, the solidly crafted songs contain a genuine emotional depth that have enabled them to stand the test of time and become punk rock standards. Dean's style oozes confidence, fun, and a willingness to explore. His inventive beats helped the band progress from local favorites to major label bigwigs. In the mid-90s, Dean decided to put the band on pause and focused on reconnecting with his graphic design career and starting a family. The Milkmen reunited in 2008, and Dean also plays in the instrumental band I Think Like Midnight. I spoke to him at Trap Set HQ in downtown Los Angeles. And now my conversation with Dean Clean Sabatino.
My dad was a high school teacher for about 30 years, and my mom also worked for the school district as a graphic designer. And then she eventually ran what they called the Media Center, which was pretty cool at the time. It was the early days of cable TV. And so they had like the local cable access TV station set up at the high school. And so when I got to the high school, my friends and I got to make TV shows and, learn about all that stuff, which was really cool.
What kind of shows would you make?
We did our own goofy, like little mini movies. Like a friend of mine and I put one together where we pretended to climb the library, which was right next door. They turned the camera on its side, and so we were crawling up the bookshelves. We did a variety show, but also we would also work, like we would film the sporting events or like the band concerts and that kind of stuff.
What about, like, when did your taste start to diverge from your parents?
It was probably in the early 70s. My dad was a teacher and he took a sabbatical leave for a year, so we lived in England. I was just talking to friends about this. This was in 1972, 73. So I went to fifth grade over in England. And I remember having friends over there, and glam was really big. And we would listen to T-Rex, Mark Bolan, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I was sort of aware of that kind of music back as early as then. But when I got back and when I started drumming, I started drums in sixth grade, just practice pad stuff. I had seen, when I was little marching bands and really dug the snare line and that kind of stuff. Finally got to play drums in sixth grade. And over the next couple of years, I really got into prog rock. That was my first real love. So I was listening to people like Genesis and Emerson, Lake and Palmer. In fact, Emerson, Lake and Palmer was my first real big rock concert in Philadelphia. And so I was into prog for a few years. But it wasn't until the late 70s when I was over at a friend's house and we saw this documentary about the British punk scene, and he was dabbling in guitar, and we kind of looked at each other and said, hey, we could do this. So we started a little two-man punk band at the time.
Before then, did prog seem doable to you on drums?
Not really. I mean, if I'm realistic, I sort of dabbled with the idea of going to Berkeley towards the end of high school. I did some audition tape stuff, and it was like, do I go to art school or do I go to music school? And in the end, I decided to go to art school, figuring if I wanted to do rock music, I could probably do it on my own.
It seems like art schools are more of a breeding ground for great rock bands.
Yeah,
than
when you
music
think about
school.
I think so. When you think about it, the history.
Why do you think that is?
Just maybe because it allows for free form ideas to, take influence on you, and you're open to maybe other mediums instead of music school, which might be a little more classically structured and, theory and stuff. Whereas with rock music, a lot of it's, self-learned, self-taught, kind of taking the influences and get it out that way.
I feel like the mission statement of punk rock was kind of opposite to that of prog rock in some ways. What was it about punk rock that spoke to you after years of listening to prog?
Well, in the late 70s when prog rock was around, there was still like classic rock. Like all my high school friends were mostly into classic rock, which I didn't really, dig that much. It just seemed like punk was more reactionary to the classic rock, and I still have a soft spot for prog rock, but
prog rock is awesome.
Yeah, it just seemed like it was something that my arty friends and I could get into and do ourselves. I mean, it was just a guitar player and me on drums, and he sang. We searched in vain. We were out in the middle of nowhere, north of Philadelphia. If we were in the city, we probably could have found a bass player, but we decided to go it as a duo, and we ended up being able to play some club shows in Philly here and there.
What was that band called?
That was called Narthex.
This episode of The Trap Set is sponsored in part by The Stoic Drummer. The Stoic Drummer is a tersely innovative book which applies a series of Stoic axioms, meditations, and universal quotes to the art of drumming. Authored by Jose Medelis, the first run of The Stoic Drummer sold out in just 10 days. You can order your copy at revivaldrumshop.com. See for yourself what drummers around the world are calling a perfect book. That's revivaldrumshop.com.
I went to school in Philadelphia at the Art Institute.
And what was your focus?
Graphic design. It's a 2-year school, and it was really focused at the time. This is before computers. Getting a job in the graphic design field. So I went to work for a couple of different printers, and it got me a job, which gave me some flexibility to still do music on the side. So I was pretty happy with the way it worked out.
Was your mom kind of a role model in that world?
Yeah, a little bit. She, definitely art and that kind of creativity was in the house. And so I got that from her, and she got it from her father, who was also a painter. So there's that aspect of the family.
Basically, you finished art school and then you went to work right away. Like there was a practical vocation waiting for you.
Yeah, a component to that. It was very practical. So I ended up hooking up with the Milkmen guys in 1983, so pretty early on.
So that was about a year out of school.
Yeah, about a year out of school.
How did you meet those guys?
My friend from high school went to school where Joe did, our guitar player, and Joe invited him to a Christmas party, and my friend invited me along, and I met those guys, and they were like, yeah, we're goofing around writing some songs, but we don't have a drummer, and Narthex had sort of just broken up. I said, oh, well, I'll come down and jam with you guys. Sure, why not? And it just grew from there. I think we had our first show about 6 weeks after I started learning their songs.
Do you feel like you had a special connection with those guys that was different from anything you'd experienced playing with other musicians?
It's hard to say. The benefit for me is that I was coming into a situation where they had already written a ton of songs already. So Joe and Dave, our original bass player, would write music, and Joe's high school buddy Rodney would contribute lyrics. And so they would make up these goofy songs, and they had a whole library of songs already written. So it was like I was dropped into this situation where all I had to do was, learn how to play drums for these songs, and we could probably start playing shows. It was kind of cool.
What did that entail for you, learning how to play drums for those particular songs?
They would give me just their little cassette recordings, of the two of them just kind of singing and play along. Because originally Joe was like singing Rodney's lyrics. It wasn't until later. In fact, I didn't meet Rodney until our very first Dead Milkmen show, which John Worster, by the way, helped organize.
And then you later paid tribute to him in a song.
Yeah, and he's mentioned in Stewart, yeah.
Over the years, how do you see your role in the band? I mean, do you help arrange the songs? Do you help with the art? What's your role as far as the creative dynamic?
Yeah, we've been lucky. I've been able to do most of the artwork for the band over the years. We've had pretty good creative control with the people that we've worked with our record companies and stuff. But yeah, I mean, we were always very cooperative in terms of songwriting. I would, arranging, and I would come up with riffs, and Joe would turn them into real songs. I would write lyrics. We all contribute. We all sort of share the songwriting duties equally, which is nice. So it's been very collaborative and cooperative. It's been nice.
What were your ambitions as a band when you played that first show?
We just wanted to start playing shows in Philly, like at the hardcore shows that we would go see. We wanted to be on those bills, and we were able to do that. And we thought, if we get good enough, we can make a recording and we can put our own record out. And then we had made a recording. We were going to put out our own little EP ourselves, and then a friend of ours who was helping us fund it needed the money to buy a new car because he wrecked his. And so we had this recording, but no way to really put it out. And we connected with Fever Records in Philly, which was sort of an economics experiment by a professor at Penn. He said, okay, this is cool. I like this. I'll give you a little bit more money to make it a full album. But of course, our songs are so short. So I think there's 21 songs on our first album. And that kind of came together in the spring of 1985, and Dave and I, contacted people in the back of Maximum Rock and Roll before email. We were making phone calls, and we managed to string together a little tour, all the way out to California and back. So we were out for 2 months in the summer of 1985.
All from people you found in Maximum Rock and Roll?
Mostly, yeah. We had, the record was distributed by Enigma Records out here in California. They were in Culver City at the time. They hooked us up with a couple of shows out here, but it was pretty sketchy. But we made it through the tour, and the song Bitchin' Camaro was on, that first record. And we were in the summer, and sort of the college radio scene was happening then, but it didn't really pick up until September, which was like a month after we had gotten back from tour. So by then, the record really started to gain some traction because that song really picked up. And so we ended up going on a little tour later that fall. And then by the next year, we were like practically a full-time band. It was like pretty quick how it all happened. It's pretty amazing to think about it now.
Bitchin' Camaro, I ran over my neighbors. Bitchin' Camaro, now I'm in all the papers. My folks bought me a bitchin' Camaro with no insurance to match. So if I happen to run you down, please don't leave a scratch. I ran over some old lady one night at the county fair.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com.
Yeah, it's kind of cool now that the crowds, we're certainly much older, and we get our fans. We have a very loyal and great fan base. but we have them bringing their kids to our shows now, which is kind of cool. So, we've got a whole new sort of generation of people listening to those records. I mean, in some ways, you have to, I have to admit that, some of our songs, which were very lighthearted or jokey in some ways, we got a little criticism about that. But, we were just sort of a little bit of, making fun of the over seriousness of some of the punk that was happening in the hardcore scene. At the time.
How did the hardcore crowd receive you guys?
Pretty good. I mean, we got on bills in Philly with some really, heavy-duty hardcore bands. But the shows in Philly were kind of cool because we didn't have the problems that we heard about, like in New York or D.C. with skinheads and stuff. Everybody was sort of very accepting of all different kinds of music, which is really cool. So it was good. I think we fit in. People, liked our music. Our sound was a little different, maybe a little cleaner. We weren't, all heavy distortion, Marshall amp type bands. We had a cleaner sound, so we set ourselves apart that way, and it worked for us.
So what does it mean when you say that you became a full-time band? Did you quit your job as a graphic designer?
Yeah, we were able to just do the band full-time and concentrate on writing songs and going on tour and releasing albums, and so that was kind of cool.
Was it really cool or kind of cool? like at the time, were you excited?
Oh yeah, we were very excited.
Did it turn out the way that you had imagined it?
Yeah, I mean, things gradually got better and better and better. We were able to, instead of sleeping on floors, we could afford cheap motels, so we could, and we could afford our own van for touring, and we would play, bigger and bigger venues, and we would have time to write songs and rehearse and do the recordings, and yeah, it was good. It was great.
And then you signed to Hollywood?
So yeah, we released in the early 90s an album on Hollywood, which didn't do too well because I don't think they really knew quite the scene that they were doing. Plus, I think, there was a transition period going on there. That's when grunge was starting to happen, Nirvana was starting to happen. I think the college music scene was changing, so, that was kind of the beginning of the end for our full-time band business. That was at that point where we had sort of been doing it for, 10 years, and I had gotten tired of kind of the slog of going around the country twice a year, and I think we were kind of, in my mind, we had kind of stalled a little bit, and it was like, okay, I think it's time for a break, and I was like, guys, I want to stop this for a while. So
it was your decision.
It was me that I went to the band and said, I'm ready to stop now. They considered getting another drummer, but then they decided, nah, it's not going to be the same. So we all just kind of stopped.
That's rare.
Yeah.
I've talked to so many drummers that get booted out or replaced like spare parts. So what is it that you think you bring to the band that's unique? If you had to describe your style, how would you describe it?
Oh my. Eclectic. I think that's one of the great things that I like about the band is that we're not afraid to try different styles of music. Like we don't have like a signature style that we have to reach for every song that we write. We can do, if we come up with a crazy idea, we're not afraid to try it and do it, and I'm totally open to that kind of stuff. So, it could be jazzy, it could be country, it could be proggy, it could be hardcore, it could be whatever. We're not afraid to try and do it, and that's the thing that I like, the variety of the songs that we do. So Rodney's really become interested in like electronic music and goth, heavy industrial type music. So that's his major influence on us right now. We all listen to all different kinds of things, and we're willing to take on all the different influences just to try out things and see how it goes, and that keeps it interesting. So, we started playing again 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the intervening years. After the band went on hiatus, what was your next step?
I went back to work. I took some computer courses because the graphic design scene went digital while I was on tour. And I worked at a coffee shop for a while. I managed a coffee shop. And I was still playing a little bit with friends here and there.
Did you miss touring?
Not really. No, I didn't miss touring. I started a family. I had a son. I started the band website in 1995 or 96 because I started to do web work then and building websites.
HTML1.
Yeah, right. So I started I put together the band site because we still had active fans, and we had a online bulletin board forum which was quite popular at the time. So I did that for a while. Played with. Actually, Joe started up a band called Butterfly Joe, and he had me play drums for that. We did one album.
Were you just as happy then, or even more happy than you were when you
Yeah,
were...
I mean, I like I said, I was ready for a break. I think I was ready for a break. So sort of the mid to late 90s was just kind of cooling off.
In your mind, were the Milkmen going to get back together at some point, or were you unsure?
I was unsure. We never really discussed it. I don't think we officially broke up. It was just like, okay, we're not doing this for now. I guess it was like early 2000s. We got approached by, I guess it was Enigma or Hollywood. I forget who put it out now. It's been a while. To put together a DVD package. So I got involved in the artwork for that, and we all came together and did a commentary track, which was kind of fun. And so that was a fun little thing to put together. And then, of course, we dealt with the death of our bass player, Dave.
Yes.
And we did some memorial shows for him, which is the first time we had played Milkmen songs in 10 years, essentially. That was 2004.
Had you and Dave been in touch over the years?
Yeah, we had all seen each other in various places here and there, but yeah, I was definitely in touch with Dave.
Because he had gone back to college and then moved to Eastern Europe, right?
Right, he went back to college and he did some studying over in what was Yugoslavia. When we had toured over there in the early 90s, he really loved the culture and the people that he met in Yugoslavia, and he just became infatuated with that whole country and history and everything. And so he actually was studying their language, and he wanted to live there. And I guess there was the Bosnian War, and he got caught up in that and had to leave. So, he was very sad and upset that happened, that he couldn't pursue his studies over there anymore. So
when he passed away, you guys got back together and decided to play some shows?
We decided to play some shows. We did have a memorial service that was, we did have some friends and family, and some fans showed up too, but we decided we wanted to do something for the fans, so we played in Philadelphia, and we enlisted Dan Stevens, who was an early fan of the band. He had played music with Joe, and he was a huge Dave fan, and so he knew a lot of the songs already. He knew the bass lines, and he just knew the style down, and so we enlisted him to play bass, and it was fun, but we didn't think it would go anywhere past that. That was in 2004, I guess.
Do you think you have a different perspective when you approach the band now as opposed to back in the 80s?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're trying to, we're not trying to be a full-time band anymore. It's somebody was joking the other day, we're part-time punks now. But yeah, I mean, now we sort of do just these like fly-out weekends where we'll play 3 or 4 shows in a row. We'll fly out to an area and drive around and play a couple of shows or a festival or two. And it's been fun. It's, it keeps us, keeps it fresh, keeps it interesting. And, still exposed to the scene and other musicians and music that's out there. And, again, we can take that influence and process it somehow. But yeah, it's been a good time. I was just marveling that it's been 10 years since we had started doing this already. So Dan, our bass player, has been in the band for 10 years now. It's crazy.
It's like a run as long as your first run,
Yeah,
practically.
pretty much, yeah.
So if you're a part-time punk, what are you full-time?
I'm back to doing graphic design. I work for a consulting company, and it's all digital now, and I do graphic design work for a living. So
Did you make the Dead Milkmen logo?
I did make the logo early on. Yeah, I drew that on a piece of paper, and everybody liked it. So I did a really cleaned up version, and just kind of came together magically.
You said you have a son. Do you have more than one kid?
No, I just have a son. He's 19 now.
And does he listen to Dead Milkmen?
He doesn't regularly listen to Dead Milkmen, but he is a musician.
So now that your child is technically an adult and you have the rest of your life stretching out ahead of you, is there anything that you've always wanted to try or do that you've never gotten around to?
I've started to dabble in sort of home recording and electronic music. I do a little bit of that at home. Joe and I actually played together in an instrumental band called I Think Like Midnight. We have 2 records out. So we've been playing locally in Philadelphia. That's a very, very different than the Milkman stuff. It's all like guitar based. Joe plays keys in the band. Much more pop and jangly guitar oriented type music. So it's fun to do that. I'm still active with the Big Mess folks. Hopefully we're going to do one of those cabarets in the next year or so. But yeah, I mean, I think with the advent of computers and home studios and recording and stuff, I can start to do more and more of that myself, which is a lot of fun. I enjoy that. And, you can press a button and it's out on Bandcamp. And, I'm not expecting to sell millions of records, but it's just fun to be able to create something and release it out into the world like that. Yeah, it's cool.
How do you feel about yourself as a drummer? Like when you listen back to a track that you recorded, do you feel proud of it or happy with your work most of the time?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it most of the time. Sometimes I listen to something that I've recorded years ago and say, I wish I did that a little different, or wasn't overplaying that, wish it was a little simpler. When we started out, the Milkmen, of course, were basically just a 3-piece, and I don't know, maybe I used to overplay a little bit more because I thought maybe I'd fill out the sound a little bit more. Now that Rodney's playing keyboards on a lot of the newer tracks, don't have that problem as much, so I think I can maybe lay back a little bit. But yeah, I'm proud of the stuff that I've recorded and worked on over the years.
Have you ever doubted yourself as a musician?
No, I don't think so.
Why not? Where does that confidence come from?
Maybe it's just the punk thing where it's like anybody can do it. I can do it. Sure, I'll hit a drum back there and make it sound musical, and it'll be fun.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the most throughout the day?
Where can I get a good taco?
Let's take some questions from our listeners. John Worster is asking if the Drum Dorks will ever reform. So first of all, I should ask, what is the Drum Dorks? Who are the Drum Dorks?
Okay, this is kind of the first light of day that the Drum Dorks ever have been talked about online. The Drum Dorks were sort of a crazy little art project, theater sketch thing that John and I did. My friend Mike, who I was in Narthex with, is kind of behind it. We assumed the roles of these characters called Flabby Gunboats and Wobbly Submarines, and we played drums. That's all we thought about, and we ate lots of pizza. And to address John's question, I don't know, because we could say something silly like There's a restraining order out between the two of them, an argument over pizza, pizza toppings. But there are some cassette tapes that exist of sort of these extended sort of character dialogues and things. Maybe that's where
that
John...
sounds perfect for Merge Records to re-release,
well, maybe.
or to release.
Yeah, I can see that's the sort of some early John Worster sort of ad-libbing and things come into play there. He's definitely a good theatrical go for it ad-libber.
This next question comes from somebody by the name of Algernon. He says, Beelzebubba, ask him why he played so perfectly on that record, and did he mean to inspire an entire generation of punk drummers? Well, would you say that you played perfectly on that record?
Thank you, Algernon. Is it Algernon?
Yeah, I guess. Flowers for Algernon.
No, I don't. We did 3 records down in Austin, Texas, with Brian Beatty, and that's one of them.
What was your process for recording?
We have always been very well rehearsed before going into the studio. Like, we know the songs backwards and forwards, and we've worked with producers, so we're willing to take ideas in and arrangement changes, but we've definitely spent a lot of time working out things. And so when we went down to record that album as one of them with Brian, he was doing things like using natural room reverbs, and I think, if I remember correctly, that's one of the records that he had me set up my drum kit out in this sort of big warehouse, a room at the back of the studio that didn't have anything in it. And so I had this super long headphone cable on, and they were talking to me, over from the control room. But we were using the big space for natural reverb, so he was into that. That's great if you like the drumming on that record. I mean, I don't remember Brian telling me to change much about my drumming for certain songs. It just, we would work out the songs pretty heavily before we went into the studio.
Did you usually get a take right away?
Sometimes we would get first takes, usually first or second. I can't remember specifically, but I think we've probably had a song that gave us trouble for some reason.
Sure.
And we would do, multiple takes, or we'd come in another day and try it again just to get the feel right. So I think that happens with anybody.
Yeah. Somebody from a record label called Godless America is asking how you always manage to make the beats interesting instead of relying on the old, boring punk rock beat. So what does it mean to you to make a beat interesting? And is that something that you consciously try to do?
Well, maybe it's my little bit of prog influence. Maybe, I don't know. I think maybe drummers a lot of time listen. I mean, I listen to the bass player, obviously, but I think I listen to guitar players more. And sometimes
it also sounds like you listen to the singer too, because you were saying before that you use the lyrics as a guide.
Well, yeah, just for changes and things. But I think for like accents or weird, maybe a twist on things, I might listen to what the guitar player is doing in terms of chord changes or what they're emphasizing, and try and use that as a key. I also take direction pretty well. Like somebody can tell me, make it simpler, or can you do a more busy hi-hat pattern or something. I'm willing to take direction and try anything.
So there was never a time where you were like, this is how I play, man.
My way or the highway. No, not really. I don't think so.
It's interesting because some people are like that, and they end up making it work for them, and then others are more collaborative.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, maybe they have a signature sound and that's their thing. I don't know if I don't think I have a signature sound. It's the Dead Milkmen sound, I guess.
Well, Dean, thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks, Joe.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.